Hello and welcome to video 4 of 5. In today's video, we're going to talk to you about communication in a hybrid environment. We're going to cover to be or not to be. Not all roles are suitable for hybrid working, so how do we go about having those conversations? We're going to cover difficult conversations, how to have them, how to avoid them. Communication strategies in a hybrid environment, and managing as a manager. So how do we go about that initial conversation around hybrid working? If you are anticipating already that there are going to be difficult conversations with certain people in your workforce, make sure that you're prepared with your rationale and supporting documentation. It's about establishing expectations. Hybrid working is a signal of trust and empowerment and should be treated as such. If you don't know an answer, say so. This is a new way of working and it will take time to embed it properly. This is just the first of many conversations and communication will fundamentally change. Make sure to signal that. Welcome feedback and prepare to adjust as you all adapt to a new way of working. One of the many reasons that hybrid working is so sought after is because it allows for the individual to plan their time more effectively, to balance work and home commitments, and exercise autonomy over their tasks and responsibilities. However, not everyone will be able to work remotely, nor is it suitable for everyone. We're going to break these conversations down in a way that stays objective and reduces the likelihood of confrontation. We're going to break the conversation down into 3 different parts: the role, the logistics, and the individual. These are the cornerstones of making an assessment as to whether hybrid working is suitable. The best place to start is discussing the role itself. These questions are not an exhaustive list. They're there to give you an idea of the types of things you might want to consider, but you know your team's best. So consider what type of activities within the role require being present in the office or on site. You may want to break it up into different days to do different things. Can any alterations be made to enable some responsibilities to be done remotely? How much of the work must be undertaken face-to-face or with other people? And this is a key question. Which work location best supports productivity and why? This is all about establishing the best way of working. If it doesn't suit the business or the individual, then it doesn't work. Considering how much supervision or support the role requires, or indeed the individual themselves. Once you've concluded this, you can then move into the logistics. Just because the role is suitable does not necessarily mean that you need to jump into hybrid working immediately. Taking a moment to consider the logistics will drastically improve the success of this transition. Thinking about things like your hybrid working policy. This is really useful to have because it establishes expectations and presents boundaries. Do you have a workstation allowing people to work safely and effectively? Do people require additional equipment in order to do so? Do you offer any wellbeing support to enable people to work in a safe and healthy way from home? Are you able to store company equipment safely and securely in the home? Have you given people examples of how to prevent unauthorised access and use? Is the environment people are working in free from disruption? Have you told them that they might need to notify their landlord or mortgage provider that they'll be working from home? These are all the logistical aspects to take into consideration. And finally, is the individual themselves suitable for this style of working? Even if the role is suitable and the logistics have all been considered, the team member may not be suited for this style of work, for the time being at least. Ideally, this should not be the first time that your individual is hearing of their learning and development needs. If it is, you need to discuss this in more depth with the people and culture team or your HR team, whatever they're called in your workplace. The questions in yellow at the beginning are really your key questions. Is the individual on a performance improvement plan or some kind of development plan? Well, if so, you may want to consider whether hybrid working is appropriate for them, but it's not necessarily a given that it wouldn't be. Do you have concerns about their attitude or performance? Well, if so, explain this with facts and evidence to support your view, because otherwise it feels like it's subjective and personal. How do they even feel about hybrid working? It's not a given that everyone wants to do this. Do you have any questions or concerns about undertaking hybrid work? If the employees work remotely during lockdown, they could give you some really key feedback as to what works and what doesn't work. This is a learning process for everyone, so gathering feedback is key to understanding how to make improvements. The question at the end of this, I think, is quite telling. Is there anything you will miss from working in the office 100% of the time? This tells you what motivates people, what people enjoy about their colleagues, the culture they work in, even the job that they do. You want to make sure that these things are protected. Now's a really good time to hit the pause button and consider these questions. Are you aligned on the suitability of the roles within your organisation? How suitable are they for hybrid working? What's your current approach to this with your managers? Do they know how to have these conversations? If not, what support do you need to put in place for them? Press play when you're ready. How to navigate difficult conversations. Well, the first thing you want to do is plan ahead. Before getting into the detail of conversation around hybrid working, you may have already decided which roles and individuals are not suitable. So plan ahead. Take some brief bullet points with you so you can stay on track. Number 2, keep it factual and rooted in evidence. Avoid any emotive or personal language. Statements like you always, you never, you don't are inflammatory. Stick to phrases like as per your recent review, as per our recent conversations, as you can see from our development review meetings, etc. Number 3, be clear and truthful. To avoid misunderstandings or problems in the future, get to the point and be honest. Everyone is then clear where they stand. Number 4, it's okay to acknowledge disappointment. For some, the decision to deny hybrid working, however logical that decision may be, will evoke a reaction. Stand by your decision, but recognise that you understand this might be disappointing or even upsetting. Number 5, keep an open mind. In some situations, it's worth keeping an open mind. The individual may offer a solution that you hadn't thought of before. If suitable, make it clear that you are open to ideas. It will make the individual feel heard and it will open the dialogue. Number 6, actively listen. Don't just sit there waiting for your opportunity to speak. Let them speak, especially if the conversation is a difficult one. It will help to diffuse it. Respond with open questions to demonstrate that you are hearing them and pay attention. Try not to interrupt. And finally, number 7 is reflection. By following the previous steps, hopefully you won't need to continue this further. However, inviting reflections once someone has had the time to absorb is likely to lead to them calming down and realising that what you've said is fair. But by not abruptly ending the discussion, you've shown that you want to protect the relationship, even if it means maintaining your stance. This might be a good time to pause again. Consider any difficult conversations that you can see coming up. What do you need to give your managers to support them to have those? But what about how hybrid working is going to change how we communicate in a more general sense? It's not just about those one-on-one conversations about whether it's right or wrong to do so. It's going to impact the way we communicate within our teams. Now, we have many mediums for communication, so it might be useful to consider the best use of these so that people are kept involved and up to date, but also not fatigued by excessive and unnecessary video calls or fatigued just from too many different channels. The first thing to consider is the method you're going to use. What message is it you're trying to convey and what's the best way to do it? You don't want people to be inundated. Do you need an in-person meeting? Would it be best for an email? Does it need a phone call? And once you've made that decision, stick to it. So why am I telling you to make up your mind and stick to it? Well, it's just about consistency. You don't want to overwhelm your team with different modes of communication, different messages coming on different platforms. You want to avoid fatigue as much as possible. Meeting fatigue is something we need to be very mindful of in a hybrid environment. The temptation to have lots of video calls is there and it's real. But if we're constantly on video calls, when do we actually have time to get our work done? You really run the risk of fatiguing your team and burning them out. We know that style of communication is important. Everyone has a slightly different one. Everyone has different preferences. Get to know your team. How do they prefer to communicate? What are their strengths, their weaknesses, their preferences? Who's extroverted? Who's introverted? ensuring that everyone feels empowered to contribute because everyone has something valuable to say. And finally, protect yourself and your teams. There's a real danger that people feel an expectation to be available at all times, even outside of working hours. You have to lead the pack here. You have to demonstrate that it's okay to protect your time. Managers are in a really tricky position. They have the responsibility of reporting upwards as well as managing down, and it's not easy. You may be looking forward to hybrid working. You might be a little bit nervous about it, or a mixture of the two. So we've come up with a list of things to keep in mind to help the transition go as smoothly as possible. Managing as a manager. This is a learning curve. It's a time for getting feedback, for working out what works and what doesn't. It's not a time for struggle or isolation. Make sure you are following advice that you give to your teams. Identify protected time that is free from interruption. If your team see you doing this, they're more likely to do it themselves. Reach out if you're not sure, if you're struggling, or you just need a bit of support. This is uncharted territory. Recognise that you do not have to have all of the answers. We are all learning as we go, and it's fine to say, I don't know, I'll find out. You cannot meet the needs of everyone. You can only find a best fit for now. Work collaboratively with other managers. They may have a solution or new idea that you would benefit from. You don't have to work alone. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this video useful. Our next video is about managing change, so please head over and take a look at it. As always, if you've got any questions or you'd like to talk to us more about this, please get in touch with us here at Start Inspiring.